What if the most famous human being who ever lived never once got to be a child? Welcome to Tales of Echoes. Today, the dark truth behind the greatest entertainer the world has ever seen. 1958, Gary, Indiana, a steel town. Gray skies, factory smoke, streets that didn't forgive weakness. Into this world a boy was born, the seventh of 9 children in a small house on Jackson Street. A boy named Michael. By the time most children are learning to ride a bicycle, Michael Jackson was rehearsing choreography for 3 hours a day. Under a father who did not believe in gentleness, Joseph Jackson, the father, was a man who understood one thing clearly. His children were talented, and talent in his hands was not a gift to be nurtured. It was a resource to be extracted. Rehearsals ran until the boys collapsed from exhaustion. Mistakes were met with a belt. Joseph has admitted, in his own words in public interviews, that he used fear as a management tool, that he wanted his sons afraid of him because he believed fear produced performance. Michael was 5 years old when the performances began, 9 years old when the Jackson 5 signed their first record deal, 11 years old when they had their first #1 hit. The world saw a prodigy, a miracle. A child who moved like no human being had ever moved before, who sang with a voice that seemed to come from somewhere older than his years. What the world did not see, what the cameras were never pointed at, was what happened after the show. What it cost to produce the miracle. Michael Jackson became the biggest star on earth. Thriller, Off the Wall, Bad, albums that did not just sell, they rewrote what was possible in popular music. But somewhere inside that extraordinary ascent, something was fracturing. Quietly, privately, in ways the stadium lights were too bright to illuminate. He had never had a childhood. He had said this himself, not once, but dozens of times, in dozens of interviews, across decades. Not as a complaint, as a simple statement of fact, delivered with the specific, exhausted calm of someone describing a loss they have processed so many times, it no longer requires emotion to discuss. He built Neverland Ranch, a private kingdom of carnival rides and movie theaters in a zoo. And he said openly that it was the childhood he never had, reconstructed in the California hills, with the money his childhood had earned. And then came the allegations. In 1993, a 13-year-old boy's family accused Michael Jackson of abuse. The case was settled out of court. No criminal charges were filed. Michael maintained his innocence. In 2003, a documentary aired. Michael, speaking on camera to a journalist, described sharing his bedroom with children as an act of love, as the most natural thing in the world. The public recoiled. In 2005, a criminal trial, 14 counts, Michael Jackson sat in a courtroom, fragile, visibly unwell, his face barely recognizable as the child who had first stood on a stage in Gary, Indiana, 40 years earlier. Not guilty on all counts. But the court of public opinion had already delivered its own verdict. And unlike a jury, it never adjourned. The man who had once been the most beloved entertainer on earth now lived behind gates, behind lawyers, behind the accumulated weight of a world that could not decide whether he was a victim or a predator. Perhaps, in ways that are deeply uncomfortable to sit with, he was both. A man so profoundly damaged by what was done to him as a child that the damage itself became the story. The last years of Michael Jackson's life were not the years of a man at peace. He was hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Neverland, the childhood kingdom he had built, was gone, lost to financial collapse. He had not performed a major concert in years. He was living quietly in rented houses in different countries, moving when the attention found him, always moving. In 2009, he announced the This Is It concert series, 50 shows at the O2 Arena in London. The comeback, the return. Tickets sold out in minutes, the fastest in history. Behind the scenes, the people working with him were worried. He was thin, he was not sleeping. He was being administered powerful sedatives by a personal physician. Not in a hospital, not under proper supervision, but in his own bedroom, because he could not sleep any other way. Michael Jackson had not slept naturally, without chemical assistance, in years. His body had forgotten how. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died in his rented Los Angeles home. He was 50 years old. The cause, acute propofol intoxication. His personal physician was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The boy from Gary, Indiana, who had given his entire childhood to a stage, who had given his entire adult life to a world that consumed everything he offered, and then turned on him when there was nothing left to take, died alone, in a rented house, unable to sleep. The world grieved, genuinely, overwhelmingly, the way you grieve something you did not fully appreciate until it was gone. His music returned to every radio on earth simultaneously. Everyone remembered where they were when they heard. But the question that no tribute answered, that no memorial addressed, was the quiet, difficult one. What did we ask of him? What did we take? And did we ever once ask if he was all right? Michael Jackson was the greatest entertainer who ever lived. He was also a boy who was handed to the world at age 5 and never once retrieved. The world called it a gift. The world called it magic. He called it his life, the only one he had, and it was never entirely his own. If you made it this far, you belong here. Like and subscribe for more. This is Tales of Echoes. Sleep well, if you can.